Hi, welcome to Inside Leisure World. This is episode 180. This is Joe Osuna. Today's guests are interesting guys from Leisure World, from the Leisure World Amateur Radio Club. One gentleman is the president, Mike Claremont, and the vice president to the right of the screen will be Sam Scher. If I'm mispronouncing your names, you guys can correct me. We're going to start with the president, Mike Claremont. Tell us a little bit about yourself before you get into the actual club.
Okay, I was born in Syracuse, New York, and I went to college in Syracuse, New York, in Lemoyne College, Syracuse, New York, graduated with a BS in biology. In 1968, when I graduated, I was drafted into the Navy. And I was sent to Great Lakes, Illinois, where I did my basic training. Then after that, I was sent to Hospital Corps School, where I learned how to do a lot of nursing and a lot of emergency care and trauma care and whatnot like that. Then I was sent to the Naval Hospital, Bethesda, Maryland, National Naval Medical Center, Bethesda, Maryland, for 2 years, where I worked in the laboratory. And then I was sent to the Naval Hospital, Long Beach, California, where I also worked in the laboratory. And I separated from the Navy from Long Beach, California, and I loved California compared to upstate New York, Syracuse, New York, with all the snow. It was horrible weather. And this area was beautiful, and I got a job here, and I was making good money here, and I stayed here, and I'm still here. I still love it.
That's good. Good. How about Sam? Sam, did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yes.
Okay, and tell us a little about yourself.
Oh, I was born in Cleveland, Ohio. I moved to Los Angeles, California very early in my life. I went to school in Los Angeles, and I went into the Air Force. I was in heavy equipment operator. I was a bomb builder, and I was also an electronic engineer. Okay. I got out of the service after 6 years, and I stayed in Los Angeles. I like the weather and everything, and I like it.
I'm afraid to ask you, how do you make bombs? You were a bomb builder.
Well, you have to put the fuse in, the tail part of it in, put the hooks in so they can lift them up and everything, and then load them on the planes.
What was the biggest bomb you worked on?
I think 750 pounds.
And that one you really can't carry around by yourself, right?
No, everything has to be done by a forklift.
Okay. And you hoist it up into the plane?
You put them on a 40-foot flatbed trailer, and it's driven to the plane, and then they have special machines that put it on the plane.
Oh, okay. So from your experience and what you've talked about so far, it's not related to radio. So we're going to find out how you came interested in it. Sam, can you continue? And I'm going to ask you is, what brought you into the world of radio?
I was in my early life, I was in citizen band radio back in the 60s. I was very interested in communications, and I learned a lot in electronics in the Air Force. And then I became a ham after I retired.
Okay. About how long you been retired?
About 5 years, and I've been a ham over a year.
Okay. And why are you called a ham? Out of curiosity, do you know? Is that just a nickname of a radio amateur?
It's just a nickname for a radio amateur operator.
Okay. Okay. Same question to Mike. Tell us how you got into this world of radio.
When I was a young child, I was fascinated by radio, by ham radio. I read a lot of books on radio, and I studied the electronics of radio, AM, FM, but we really didn't have enough money for me to purchase radio equipment And although I was fascinated with it and wanted to get involved with it, I just couldn't do it because ham radio equipment is quite expensive. It even was expensive when I was a young man. And then, but you know, later in 1998, when I started to make some money and I had a little extra, I decided to take the ham radio license, and I passed it, and I became an extra, which is the highest ranking ham radio operator you can be. And I had the money, I could afford the equipment, and I put a station together in my home, and I've loved it ever since. But I've always been fascinated with it, just that in 1998 I finally had the resources to be able to put together the equipment and whatnot to do it.
Okay, later on we're going to find out about how other people can qualify and what it takes to start the process and how cheap it is and how expensive it is. But before we get there, Sam, can you, Mike, can you tell us about the Leisure World Amateur Radio Club? What is that?
The Leisure World Amateur Radio Club is a club that has two facets. The first facet is that it's a club for people to enjoy the hobby of ham radio. We have all the different kinds of ham. We have a very well-equipped ham radio operation in Leisure World. In our radio room, we have as many radios as they do in the EOC in Seal Beach Police Department.
And what's an EOC?
The Emergency Operations Center. And the radio club is right next to the Emergency Operations Center. The two facets of our operation are, one, it's a hobby, and it's there for all the people of Leisure World to enjoy, that they would like to learn radio and use radio. We give them a key. They can use the radios 24/7. If they're in the middle of the night, they want to go up and they want to use the radios, they can use the radios. In addition to that, we provide an emergency disaster radio communications service, which means during a disaster or any emergency, if Seal Beach RACES division, which is the radio operators, the auxiliary radio operators.
So what's a RACES? What does that mean?
Radio Amateur Civil Emergency Service. And what happens is, in the Seal Beach Police Department, or any police department, they have a dispatcher, usually one, or maybe two if they're lucky. In an emergency, they're going to be overwhelmed with calls and communications. They're going to be communicating with the public, 911, and all of that stuff. So they need more radio operators. The Seal Beach Police Department has another room which has additional radios that volunteers can come in and start helping out. And what we do is we have RACES operators in Leisure World. We put them in our radio room, which we have, and we communicate with Seal Beach Police Department and the RACES group, and we tell them on an hourly basis what's going on at Seal Beach, how's everything going, what's wrong, what kind of injuries, what kind of catastrophes, what kind of damage, fires, whatever.
Okay, so from that I gather there's really two phases to your club. One is the personal use of the radios and personal enjoyment of the radios, and then the other facet would be the emergency part, preparedness of your club to participate in a huge or big emergency, right?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Okay, so I'll ask Sam, what kind of emergencies come in mind that RACES could be useful for?
Earthquake or a flood. For Seal Beach, if the tides are high, could flood the areas and everything. Different kind of public service events they can use. They can use them for parades. They can use them for marathons. Any kind of really emergency, if they had a big fire or if they close down a certain area,
okay,
to help the police department with communications.
Now, do you guys practice any drills pretending there's an emergency, anything like that?
We check our radios. We have a radio net, which is a call-in at 9 o'clock, Monday through Saturday in the morning. We check in to make sure our radios operate and everything. And there's other nets around, all around the United States that people check in to check their radios once a week. Or
Okay. Have you had any drills, earthquake drills or fire drills or flood drills, Mike, that you could recall?
Yes, one of the major events in Leisure World is the Great American Shakeout, which occurs every October. And that is a big part of our preparedness. All the mutuals are mobilized with their emergency communicators, and the radio is operational, and the building captains go around and fill out the disaster report on each individual apartment, and they radio those things in on either their ham radios. We have ham radio operators in every mutual, and we also have the Family Radio Service radio operators who operate small walkie-talkies. And they will radio in their reports to the radio room, and we will copy those down on a special form, ICS 213 form, which is required for all messaging in radio service. And then we, in a real emergency, we would re-radio that information to the Seal Beach Police Department, and then they would have a very good idea of what needs we have, if there's any fires, how many people need to be transferred immediately. We call them immediates. How many people need immediate care. And that way there, when the fire department and first responders get to Leisure World, they will know exactly how many people, they'll know where they are, if there's any fires, what's going on, and that's what we do. And we practice that on a monthly basis. We have the last Wednesday of every month is for a drill, and we communicate with the mutuals, and we do exactly some of the things that we would have to do during a real emergency.
Okay. Sam, Mike's mentioned two kinds of radios, if I was listening correctly, a family type radio and a ham radio. Can you kind of tell us what the difference is?
well, a family service radio is anybody can operate. They don't need a license. A ham radio, amateur radio, you need a license. You can become a technician, that's the lowest. Then there's general and the second level, and then the third level is the highest, it's extra class. And you have to take a written test for all of them.
The family service radio, if there's no requirement to operate, or at least licensed, I mean, what's the disadvantage of that over full ham radio?
Family service radio can only put 0.5 watts out, which is not very much. Over the flat land, it can maybe go a mile or two. Okay. If there's buildings, it would go less. Ham radio has a lot of frequencies. Maximum power is 1,500 watts. You can have big antennas and everything, and you can talk all around the world.
Okay. Talking about antennas, do you guys have something called an antenna farm up there in your location where your club is located? Is that a fair way of describing what you have up there? A bunch of sticks up there over the roof?
Yes, yes. Yeah, we have an antenna farm up there with various numbers of different kinds of antennas. We have a beam antenna, which looks like maybe 5 or 6 arms stretched out, and it looks more like an arrow or a V. And it concentrates the radio waves in the protection like an arrow, where the V points is where the radio waves are going. It's very effective, it's very powerful, and that's a worldwide antenna. We can communicate all over the world on that particular area with shortwave radio. We have some short vertical antennas. They stick up like a stick in the air. Those are for FM, and they are for short range communications. The FM radios are very good for, the police use FM radios, and all stores and things like that use FM. They produce a very good sound. It's easy to understand, but they are short range. Okay. And the police department use those also because, well, they're short range, but they communicate in the city very well. So we have a number of those radios, and Sam has an antenna farm on his car. He's got six antennas on his car. He's got a mobile antenna farm there. And various people in the mutuals also have antennas on their roofs. They can ask their mutual director, and then if they can put an antenna on their unit, on their apartment, and if they deem it's necessary, if they are a member of RACES, they will allow them to put an antenna on their personal apartment. So yeah, we have a lot of antennas in Leisure World.
Okay. Where is your club located? Who wants to answer that one? Who?
I'll let Mike answer it.
Okay. In the back of the amphitheater, right in the back of the amphitheater, there's two offices, and one of them is the Emergency Operations Center, and the Disaster and Emergency Coordinator, Eloy Gomez, has his office there. That's his office. Next to the Emergency Operations Center is the amateur radio room. That's where all the radios are. And during an emergency, the director, Leisure World director, and all of his assistants, various departments, will be in the Emergency Operations Center. We will be in the radio room, and whatever they want us, whatever types of communications they want us to transfer to the Seal Beach Police Department or other areas, we will do that. And whatever they want us to transfer, whatever they want us to say, we will tell them what's going on in Leisure World.
Okay, you mentioned it's at the back of the amphitheater. So I'm trying to describe to the residents, you have a bunch of rows of seating areas in the amphitheater, and you have the low seating area and you have the high seating area, right at the very top. And you guys are located at the very top of the seating area of the amphitheater, right?
Right.
Okay. So I get a good idea where you're at. Okay. We and you know, we have some questions from the audience, and one of the questions from Mary App concerns, she's an environmentalist, so she's concerned about birds. Do your radios harm birds?
No. The radio transmissions are not, they don't have enough power to harm any kinds of animals. They're very effective at transmitting communication, but they will not, we use AM and FM. They don't have enough power to hurt any kinds of animals. However, if you were near a microwave transmissions, which are done by TV stations and stuff like that, it might not be very good.
But you guys don't use microwaves?
No, we don't use that. Just AM and FM. Okay. That's all we use. And we're low. We're like Sam said, 1,500 watts. Some of the radio stations around LA use 50,000, watts. So we're low power.
Okay, another member of the audience, Joseph Chavez, wants to ask about AM. What is AM? And his question is there a high fidelity AM, or what is that? What's AM?
AM is, you have a basic frequency like on your radio, 640 or what. That 640 is the number of vibrations, per second. And so you have a carrier wave, that they call that a carrier wave. That will carry the information. Now, how do you get the information on the radio wave? The only way you can get it, there's two ways that we do. We vary the frequency of the radio wave, that's frequency modulation, or we vary the amplitude of the radio wave, and that's AM communications. And that will add the voice part of the message.
Is there one better than the other for voice?
Yeah, FM it's more high fidelity. It sounds better. AM is subject to a lot of static. Like if you have thunder, lightning. In the old days, if you were listening to a nice musical program and the lightning went off, you'd hear crack, crack, stuff like that in the radio. And but FM is not subject to any of those atmospheric conditions that would cause you to hear a bad sound. It's a much better sound, and it doesn't crackle or hiss or whatever.
I'm going to ask Sam. Sam, does your radio club, you're the vice president, transmit in AM or FM or both?
Both.
Both? Okay. Janice Lane from our audience also wants to know, she doesn't know if FM is better than AM, or if FM, if FM reaches out further than AM is her question. Who wants to answer that one?
I can answer that. Did you want to answer that, Sam?
I'll let you answer it.
Okay. FM sounds a lot better, but FM is line of sight. In other words, from the antenna, if you go out from the antenna, straight out from the antenna, where that hits the ground or whatever that hits, it stops. And it's short. In other words, FM is for short distances. AM used to be called shortwave, and everybody knows what a shortwave radio is from the old days. You could transmit from California to any country in the world over shortwave. AM will go up, hit the ionosphere, bounce back to Earth, and then bounce back up, and sort of bounce all around the globe. So you can talk about anybody in the world. You can talk over AM. So it's much better as far as communicating long distances. The sound is not that great, though.
Okay. Okay, then we have Irene Sestero is asking about how many members do you have in your club? Sam, you want
to answer it?
Okay. We have about 40 plus members in the club. And people who have all kinds of different interests. Some people, they want to go get over in that radio room and they want to work the radios all the time. Other people enjoy working in the disaster field. They want to help organize the mutuals, train the mutuals in the operation of their walkie-talkies, and that's one of our big jobs is to help the mutual operators with their walkie-talkies learn how to operate their walkie-talkies, because they are more complicated than you might think. And as a lot of people know, people, like they used to do with their old VCRs, if they were having trouble, they would start pushing all the buttons, you know, and it would get locked up, you know. That happens on these small walkie-talkies too, you know. People start. And so we want to make sure that they know exactly how to operate those radios. In an emergency, they'll be able to operate them properly without locking them up.
Okay. And the last question is from Charlene Chavez. She wants to know if women can join your club. Can they?
Yes, they can. Yes, they can. We have a lot of women that join, and amateur radio is for both. And there's probably equal number of ladies and men in amateur radio.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question then. Are women better talkers than men? Or this is going to put you on the spot here, and I don't know if you want to answer that or not.
They're about the same.
The same?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, now we covered emergency stuff pretty good. Back to the fun part of this. I understand you both are involved in some kind of a radio station that is from the ocean to the desert, Santa Barbara to San Diego or something. Can you tell us about that radio station that runs out of Leisure World? Is that correct or not?
Yes, it runs out of Leisure World. Go ahead. Okay, every Sunday night at 7:45, Sam and I do a talk show on the DARN network, the DARN Amateur Radio Network. And this is a network of antennas. They are linked antennas. They run from above Santa Barbara all the way down to northern Mexico, and like we say, from the sands of the desert to the sands of the ocean. And Sam and I, we ask people that we have some topics that we discuss, and if people would like to comment or if they disagree with us, they can get on their radios and they can come in and disagree with us. If they have some other kind of information that they would talk about, usually what we do is we start off and say, is there anybody who would like to check into the program tonight? And if they check in, usually we have about 8, 10, 15 people. They check in right off the bat. And then we go up to the top and we say, okay, John, what did you do today? Or what fun things have you been doing lately? And they tell that. And then once they start talking, you can say, well, okay, could you elaborate on that, similar to what you do, you know? And they start talking, and then maybe the next person will say, well, I don't agree with that. And then pretty soon you have a program that's, you know, it's up and running and it's going on its own.
Okay. Sam, have you had anybody disagree with you in your when you're talking on this radio?
Some people disagree. It depends what they disagree on the things we're saying, or other people disagree what they hear on the radio.
So how do you handle someone? It's easier for someone who agrees with you. How do you handle someone who disagrees with you?
They're allowed to have their own opinion, so we just let them have their own opinion.
Okay. Now, are these disagreements are? I know they're gentlemanly. Though I don't think they're like a big down knockout fight.
No.
Right? Is that okay?
That's correct.
Okay. And do they disagree about the technical aspect of an operation or political aspect of it, or what's the flavor of?
No political. They for ham radios, they don't really talk political.
Okay.
Usually technical, how to operate a radio, or what they've seen, you know, or what they hear.
Okay. All right. So we talked about the emergency stuff, the fun stuff, your radio station. I hear you guys also go on an ocean cruiser, ocean liner. Tell us about that. What's that about? You're like the Queen Mary?
Oh. Okay.
Who would like to talk?
We volunteer for one shift a month on the Queen Mary. It's a museum ship, and it's in Long Beach Harbor. And we volunteer, we tell people about it, and we operate the radios on on the ship. It's called the wireless room. This is what ships call it. And this was on the Queen Mary that operated from 1936 to 1967, when it was moored at Long Beach Harbor.
So this is the original radio room of the Queen Mary? Or
It's not the original.
okay.
It's one level up. It's a replica.
A replica?
Of the wireless room.
And what kind of radio gear do they have there?
Well, they have old radio equipment, radio receivers. They aren't operating right now because they need 400 or 500 volts. That's what they used to have. But they also have a state-of-the-art emergency communication ham radio operations. If a disaster or something happens, all those radios would be operating. They have HF, VHF, all kind of radios for the police department, the fire department. The Long Beach government would notify their police department, which will notify operators to go over there and man them.
Okay. We're running short on time. I'd like to ask you, how does somebody go about to join your club, and is there any training available for them? So who would like to?
And then Mike answer it.
Okay, Mike.
The best way to do that is to, of course, we have an ad in the paper every month telling when the time of the club will be.
Well, when does it meet? When does it meet?
It meets the first Wednesday of every month at 10 o'clock, Clubhouse 3, Room 9. And if they come over there at that particular time, Clubhouse 3, Room 9 at 10 o'clock, the first Wednesday of every month, just come in, take a seat, and the minute you walk in, we know what our members look like. We know you're a new member, and usually somebody comes right up to you and says, glad you could stop in, hope you can stay, would you like to join the club? And you don't have to be a ham radio operator to join the club, because a lot of the radio operators operate family radio service radios, which you don't need a ham radio license. And but if you are a ham radio operator, we'd love to have you. We need more ham radio operators, but no matter what you want to do in radio, you can join the club because you can operate the radios, you can get involved with emergency and disaster training or service, and we'd love to have you.
Okay, with that, we're going to have to shut down, but you do have training available, is that correct?
We do. We do have training for everybody in all facets of radio.
Great. Thank you very much. With that, we're out of time. Sorry. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.